Hi, guys. I'm Gretch Elizabeth, and I'm here today with Vanessa, who I have had the pleasure of knowing for over 3 years now. I can't believe that it's been 3 years.
I can't believe it either.
Isn't that cool? And as you heard in the intro, Vanessa came to me earlier this week and she asked me to flip roles with her. So, in the past, twice now, I've been a guest on Vanessa's show. And today we're doing something different. We're going to roll reverse, and I'm going to be the podcast host, which I've never done before. And this is a really special opportunity for me to just practice doing this. It's fun. I'll never be a podcast host, but I can at least say I tried now. And so I have a list of questions that I'm going to be asking Vanessa so that her audience can get to know her better and so that she can celebrate her 100th episode with us all and me too learning more about Vanessa. So this is a really special episode, guys. And I have my notes here and I will be following them because I want to make sure I get all the questions right. Yes. So let's just start from the beginning, and we're going to go a little bit into the beginnings and sort of a reflection time period for Vanessa. And the first question is, are you ready?
I am ready, and thank you. Thank
Okay,
you. Thank you for hosting me.
you're welcome. Okay, here it is. It is, what did you think this show would be when you started, and what has it actually become?
Wow. And for the record, and I was telling Gretch off air that, I didn't go through these super thoroughly. Like I have seen these questions, but I did not script this. I did not write anything out. I did not really prepare for this. So this is going to be off the cuff a bit, and I feel like it's best that I do it that way. So I just wanted to preempt everybody by saying that. And also, I'm so grateful for those of you who are listening. This is a it's going to be really fun and interesting. And I will start off by saying that I think that in some ways this show became what I thought, because I had this vision of, do of reaching out to people and eventually having people reach out to me, and sharing different perspectives with health, and also potentially not even perspectives that I entirely agree with. Like I always just I had some sort of a vision, and I watched other podcasters do this. But I think what it became was something different too, if that makes sense. So like it's both. So I think it became this place where, I don't know, almost like I entered every time I enter an interview, it's like I enter this space of joy, and I enter this space of excitement and a good form of anxiety, because I can't wait to learn. Because if there's one thing that I've realized through this process, and I don't know if this is even answering the question, it's that like the more that I have interviewed, the less I realize that I know. And so I feel like it's become this really lovely space that I pray has blessed other people through sharing different perspectives. And I honestly didn't know how it was going to reach people. Like I didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to take off. I had no idea if, 10 people were going to listen, or if 10,000 people were going to listen. Like I had no idea. But it like and I don't yeah, like I said, I don't even know if this is answering the question properly, but it's just like it is what I thought it was going to be, and it's also different because it has reached a lot of people, and it has, I pray, touched other people's lives in a way that I wanted to. And I always just wanted to make some sort of a difference because of the experiences that I've gone through, and the frustrations and the path and the journey. It's been so long. And in certain seasons within the season of my health experiences, just, it's been a tumultuous trial, right? And it's like if I could bring and merge these voices with others, and sort of, you know, just bridge a gap and be able to shed light in some way and help shed light, and maybe just, spark something in them to think a different way about health, then that was the goal. And I had no other goal at the time other than I just want to do this. I don't know where it's going to go, and we'll see. So I don't, like I said, that was kind of a roundabout way of answering the question, but that's what came up. Like I said, this is not scripted.
No, no, I think you answered it beautifully. And I know I can speak for myself. When I was on your show early on, so it was back in 2023 was the first time, I was just dipping my toes in of being a guest on podcasts. And I was really nervous. And I know we had a pre-call, and there was just something so comforting about meeting with you and talking with you that I was like, I know I can do this. I can do this because it was you. I felt comfortable being interviewed by you specifically. And then it ended up opening all these doors for me to go and do other podcasts. And that wasn't something that I ever thought I would be comfortable doing. And now I don't even know, 20, 25 in I've done as a guest. And so it really did spark something in the movement that I'm working on. And you were in that first handful of few to invite me. So I'm so grateful that
Wow.
you did.
I love that. I so love that. And yet, it's interesting because in the beginning, I was solely reaching out to people. I mean, you were, I think it's somewhere in the teens in terms of show numbers. I think it was like,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, 16 or 15, somewhere around there. And in the beginning, I was entirely doing my own reaching out because that's what you have to do. And I had no team behind me. I still don't. I have an editor team, but I don't have a marketing team. And so, now it's a mix, of course, like podcast agents pitch you and guests
Yep.
come to you, and you get a lot of traction once you get going, if the show takes off. But at the time, it was like me reaching out. And I remember just how tough it was for me at first, reaching out to people, thinking like, well, are they even going to want to come on a show, especially like a newer show? I mean, I had connections somewhat from being on social media for a few years, but I had no idea how people were going to respond to that. And I remember you just being so gracious when I connected with you, and I was like, "Wow, really? Like you want to come on? Like this is amazing." And so it's funny because it's sort of mutual. It's kind of I was equally as humbled and felt so just like, "Wow, what a gift for people to actually say yes." And for people to want to come on and have a conversation. What a blessing that was and still is.
Mhm. Well, you provide a vehicle for people to be heard and to feel seen. And that was something that our movement for NeverTox was missing. So, like I said, I am grateful. So, okay, I have another question then.
Okay,
So,
okay.
now that you're 100 episodes in, or 99, because this is the 100th, what is something that you believed in the beginning? So, when you first started, especially in those first like 10, 11, 13, number 13 episodes, say, that you don't believe anymore, that you believed in the beginning, but now you don't believe it anymore?
Actually, I do know the answer to this question fairly quickly. I think that I was a little bit more I don't want to say closed-minded because obviously I'm not closed-minded when it comes to health and I started jumping out of sort of the conventional paradigm very early, earlier than when social media was even I mean, I started like going down the alternative health community path and that kind of thing in my 20s. But I think that one of the biggest things that I have changed on was I think that I have realized that there is really no clear-cut path for people to get well
Mm.
or to I used to be a bit more I there's a specific word I'm looking for and I can't think of it, but I used to be a bit more narrow-minded with it and I like, oh, I'll give you an example. It's in order for you to get better, like you have to tackle the nervous system. The nervous system is like where it's at entirely. And like that's the sole focus. Or, it's like I was kind of operating in this while I was open minded, I had ideas and thoughts and theories about how everyone kind of needed to walk a similar line. And I think
Mm.
what I've realized is that's not true. It's really not true. And the more that I've interviewed, the more I've realized that there's a million different paths and there's a million different ways to get to a better place with your life and your health, be it physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And I think, and obviously for me, the spiritual aspect is a foundation in life, and I think that that is critical. And I realize that, not everybody feels that way. And so, for me, that's kind of a non-negotiable thing. But I just think like whether it's you're tackling your diet first, or you're tackling your nervous system first, or you're tackling this, or you're taking some like different things are going to work different for different people. And that's just the way that it is. And, everyone's path is going to look different. And while I knew that before, I still was sort of not entirely as open-minded as I am now, if that makes sense. And there, like I said, there's a word that I'm looking for here that I can't put my finger on. Like I was a bit more dogmatic.
Oh, mhm,
Yeah, I was a bit more dogmatic. And I just thought, like, oh, well, most people are, need to look at this and most people need to. And I just, as I've walked this journey, I've realized gosh, it really is so different for everyone, and that might be frustrating for people to hear because they think like, "Oh gosh, well then what is the answer?" And it's like, "Well, that's the journey that you have to walk. That's the journey you have to walk," And podcasts and experts, they're never going to give you like the soul ticket. They're never going to give you the absolute the clearest answer in the world. What we're providing as guests and as people who are interviewed and experts is information, and it's up to you to do to do whatever you choose to do with that information. And you're going to know intuitively, discerningly, if something is for you. You can take that and explore it and do the research and then start the whatever, if it's a protocol or if it's whatever it is. And if it does work, amazing, and if it doesn't, then you explore more. But
mhm,
it's we're never here to tell you like this is the way.
mm,
This is the way. We're here to give you the information. And I think that, yeah, in the past, I probably thought, wow, okay, well, there's a few ways that this can go for most people, and most people need to start here, and then they got to go to the next place, and then they got to go to the next place, and then they'll probably arrive. And it's like, no, that's not how it works.
You're touching on just the complexity of people's journeys,
Yeah.
that usually center around health, but there's other aspects of it, and it's so complex, many, many different layers. And I love that you described it in that way and that you thought there'd be an ABC, but no, there's not. There's a who knows how we even describe it, AZSRQ, all over the
It's all
place.
over the map, and it's so cliche to say, but it's like, people's journeys are not linear, and, you hear people and practitioners and doctors and health coaches say that all the time, and, I almost wanna beat my head up against the wall when I hear it. But the
Yes.
truth is it's not, and a lot of times it's not an easy road. Occasionally a miracle happens. Occasionally you do come across information and you apply it and your whole life changes very quickly. But unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because that would be nice for us all, but unfortunately that's not usually the case. And there are so many different roads that people can go down. And I think that like that's also the beauty of it is that someone can actually seek and find healing with path A. And, they might, person B can seek and find healing with path C, and there's different things that work differently. And I just feel like that's also a very beautiful thing,
Mhm.
because there's so much out there that can be helpful. And we have a plethora of information, and I get that it's overwhelming, and I've never wanted it to be overwhelming for people. That's been something I've struggled with this entire time. Has been like, I just don't want people to get so overwhelmed to be like, "Oh my gosh, now that I have this information, now what do I do?" But it's like, there's a lot of beauty in being able um to have all of this stuff at our fingertips now. Yes, it's overwhelming, but at the same time it's amazing because we
It is.
have so much, like I said, at our disposal. And we can go in so many directions and we can experiment. And if it doesn't work, we can move on to the next thing, or we can, make different choices. And you never know what's in front of you. But hope is always there. And there's so much out here for us.
Isn't it the best when you're on a path and you think this is going to help you heal a certain thing, but then it doesn't heal that thing. It heals something totally different that you never imagined or envisioned that it would lead you to that. That is
Exactly.
really cool. And that happens too.
It happens too, and I'll tell you how that sometimes happens is sometimes you think that, like, doing something for your physical body, like, you go into a protocol as an example, and you think like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna do this." And then it opens up this entire door of looking at your life and maybe your past and the way that you've lived your life, or things you've allowed, or things that you've, been maybe avoiding, and you end up healing more completely
Mm.
because it's not just about the physical. You're now looking at your emotional health, and you're now looking at your mental health and how all of that is incorporated into your physical body, because people usually get symptoms and that's what sparks this journey for them, right? Like, everyone's just walking down the street, just la la. They might have, a lot of stuff going on or a lot of stuff suppressed, but they don't address anything until the physical shows up.
Yes.
So it's really so much more usually than the physical body that needs healing. It's usually inside. And there's
Mm.
always a component there that we need to address. And oftentimes that's the hardest part. And so
Yeah.
once you start scraping the surface and unpeeling the onion, you realize, wow, there's a lot more layers here that I need to look at. And that's how you end up healing something
Yeah.
else.
Because a
Right?
lot of times it's the things you don't want to look at, the things that are too hard to address, the things that you want to keep hidden, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, and I'm sure, if people are listening and they've listened to the show in the past, they've heard me say the same thing over and over again, which is, and I know this from personal experience, and it's been such a hard, hard lesson to learn, which is it's usually in the corner you don't want to look in, that's where your answer is.
Yeah.
And, it's hard. It's really, really hard. But you know, as a as a person who, like I said earlier, very much believes in God. It's like God is not interested in healing just your physical body. He's interested in healing you. And that includes all parts of you. And so sometimes you do have to go through suffering, and you do have to walk the journey as I have walked and still walking, because there's so much more to healing than we think. And we've been conditioned to think from a very early age. So, it's a whole person. And that's been
Mhm.
the premise of this show. And I think through me interviewing, so many people, I think I have opened my eyes even more so to that. Like, I thought I knew it was connected, and now 100 shows in, I'm like, wow, it's never not all connected.
You unlearned.
I unlearned.
Deconstruction and unlearning happened
Absolutely.
in the first
Absolutely.
99 shows. So
Absolutely.
looking back then, was there a very specific moment or an episode that stands out in your mind as being a turning point for you, where you all of a sudden you took a step back and you're like, oh, oh wow. And it's sort of, it made more sense at that time.
Oh, I think there's been a few.
Ooh, I love that.
Yeah,
Tell
I
us
think there's
one.
been a few. I will say, only because it was recent, and so it came to my mind first, and so it's not to say that, because there's definitely been more than one, but I will say that the episode that I did at the beginning of this year, with Vinny Crispino from the Pain Academy, where he turned the tables on me, and uh he kind of put me in the seat and
Hot
almost,
seat.
I don't want to say interviewed me, but kind of used me as an example through the show, because, or through the episode, because he knew that I had been walking and not all the details, but he knew I had been walking a really tough journey with chronic pain and the nervous system, and that loop that happens, not by the body's fault, because the body is designed beautifully and it does whatever it has to do to protect us. But he turned the tables a bit, and he was asking me questions in effort to provide the audience with, a real live example of the people that he works with. And so during that experience for me, there was some moments where it wasn't new information, but the way that he presented it to me and the way he was speaking to me, it was almost like I was learning some of these things again with fresh eyes. And it gave me a lot to think about in terms of my own life and the things that I needed to address, and the again, the grace that I had to give my body, because as hard as it is, and with all the knowledge and information that we have and I have acquired over the years, I'm still dealing with things. I'm still walking a really hard path, and I can sometimes beat myself up for that, and I've dealt with a lot of, yeah, like up and down feelings about that, because I think, wow, here I am, like walking this crazy journey behind the scenes and being honest about it, through the shows, but not necessarily making it about myself. And, it's just been, yeah, it's like the weirdest, I guess the word is like juxtaposition, maybe, like just, yeah. And, so he, I guess, created a space, back to your question, he created a space w for me where I had to, again, take a hard look at myself and, really sort of go, "Okay, like, this information has been presented before, but it's also being presented a little bit differently right now. What are you gonna do with it?" So, yeah, he that was a big one. That was a big one, for me
I
personally.
remember. I
Yeah.
remember when that happened because we were conversing, and it was shortly after that happened, and you told me about that. And I think you were still, even in that moment, it might have been a day or week later, I'm not sure, you were still
Yeah.
processing that entire situation, as I'm sure it took even further days and weeks that you were still thinking about that.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
it definitely,
incredible.
because I think for so long I had, like most people, I had wanted my situation to be something that was just, like, methodical and easy to tackle, and it's not, and there it's hard to hear the truth. It's hard to do the work that is necessary. And I'm no expert still. Um like I said, it's and I say this often during episodes, we could have all the knowledge and even wisdom, because wisdom is different than knowledge. I was just having this conversation last night with friends. We can have all of that in the world, but when we're stuck in a really tough situation and we have journey fatigue and we're
Oh,
walking this path, um, a w- application is a whole other thing, because you can be in survival mode, you could be exhausted, you could be, and so, yeah, that was definitely a standout for me personally.
I love that. You answered that question beautifully.
No.
Yeah. So let's switch gears just a tiny bit. Let's talk about, I don't think people really have a full grasp on what goes on behind the scenes of being a podcast host. You mentioned searching for guests and contacting people, especially early on, and obviously that's still a big part of what you do. But I mean, I know there's a lot of back end work. I know there's editing involved, there's the social media aspect, like all of that. But tell us about some of the hardest moments behind the scenes that people don't know about, that you've never talked about, perhaps.
Oh, wow. I mean, let me count the ways, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. What
Yeah.
stands out the most?
Oh gosh. What stands out the most? I want to say that, like, overall, I've been really happy, and blessed, I should say, with like how I've been able to produce the show. Um, because there has been more smoothness than there has been hiccups, especially in its not always. I mean, a lot of hosts will do like the majority of the process, but then you get into some of these much bigger shows. They obviously have like full size teams and all of that stuff. I will say that the when I have had like I've had some serious editing hiccups happen, which is interesting because even most recently I had two shows that like really were off the rails crazy with things that had happened technically, and one of them couldn't air, and we had to redo the whole thing. That was actually episode 99.
Oh
Um,
no.
yeah, so she was the best guest. It was great to have her be there for that whole thing. And then Matt Blackburn, my friend, the owner of Life, it happened with his show too in episode 98. The whole entire, like, the production just the recording shut down, and it was just we had the craziest time that day. But there's been a lot of, like, even with, editing and last minute stuff and not being able to get things out, like, being up late at night because something is going back and forth in the editing process and, those kinds of things. But if I'm completely honest with you, what stands out the most, it's not bad or hard, it's just challenging because I think, and I've said this before, we're so used to as a society, we're so used to let me give an analogy. Let me order something. I'm going to order this product on Amazon and it's going to deliver to my door. And the only thing that you see is when you are ordering the product on your computer and then when it's delivered to your door and you open up that envelope or that
Yeah.
package. What you don't see is all of the steps and the people involved that took place in the middle. And so I think that the middle is where the challenge is, and not because it's been, oh my gosh, so tedious and so difficult, but because it is so much work. And I think that until you're in a position like anything, if you're a business owner, you don't know how much work goes into it until you're in the business, right? Until you're doing the thing. People don't realize how much work goes into something like
Yeah.
podcasting, from the beginning stages and, connecting with guests, to the studying of the subject matter, to the outlines, to the, discovery calls, if those are part of it, to the actual interview, then to post editing and the edit process, and then the marketing and social media, and then on and on and on and on. And so every episode is like a story. Every episode is like, the first click is, okay, what do I want to buy? And then there's all these steps, right? And then the delivery of that thing is the very end, when people say, oh, there's episode 74. I'm going to listen, right? And it's just natural for us to just listen and move on. But there's just all this back end stuff that took place to get that episode out there. And that's with so many things. It's not just
Yeah.
podcasting, right? It's with so many things,
I'm
you know?
sure you're refining your process all the time, though. Like you're always learning and you're probably always tweaking it ever since the very beginning. Because when you first started, you didn't probably know all of the things you know now
No.
that streamlined your work, that make it easier, that kept you going, right? How many times have you totally doubted yourself and been like, I'm just going to totally quit because it was too challenging? Did that happen to you? Because
Yeah.
there's so much, these little details, there's so many of them.
There's so many, so many. And like I said, it doesn't even really, I mean, maybe it does to some regard. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But like, I was gonna say it doesn't really matter the size of the show, because it can. I think with really massive shows, there's even more production and there's in-person interviews and like all that stuff. But but still, even with like a show like this, um, the work is, yeah, there's just so many bits and pieces. And yeah, it's been good to obviously like take advantage of experience, because I've been able to streamline things. And AI is coming to the picture too, and like that changes stuff, because we can use AI now to help formulate and brainstorm,
True.
which has been really helpful. Not like AI comes in and does things for us, but you know what it will with
Right.
some people, I'm
It's
sure.
a
But like,
tool. It's a
it's
tool to
a
help.
tool. Yeah, it's a tool, and that can be really helpful to just put your ideas down and have things, and so that takes off some time. But I still largely do almost everything myself, again, except for the actual, I pre-edit, but for the actual editing itself, yeah, I still do 90% of the work.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew there was a lot of work behind the scenes, but to hear you speak it and to talk about it, it's like, okay, now I know I could definitely really never, ever be a podcast host. I'm just saying that now. Okay, so all of that to say, tell us and tell me, your listeners, the one thing about what's been really real behind the scenes, like one thing that's just been so real to you, but this is behind the scenes. What would it be?
Real in terms of like in what way? Like,
Like real in terms of, well, you've already touched on the work, but real in terms of like pushing through it, like like the real challenge. Like if you had to just pick one thing. I think I asked you if you've ever doubted yourself and wanted to quit. You sort of answered that.
I think, okay, that's okay. I'm gonna branch off of something I said earlier,
Branch it off.
which is, um, I think one of the one or yeah, maybe I'll touch on 2 things. One of the things that's been the most challenging for me, which I alluded to earlier, has been feeling like maybe I wasn't wasn't ideal for this position. Wasn't ideal for this mission or this call or however you want to say it. And I know that might sound funny, but yeah, feeling like, kind of the imposter syndrome creeps in with, who are you? Like, who are you to sit with people of this? And I've had some fantastic guests on, like people who are extreme, some people extremely well
Wow.
known. I mean, just a
Yes.
really like a vast array of people. I've had a celebrity on the show, which I didn't anticipate having on. Joy Corrigan, like back in 2023 or whenever that was.
Yep.
And
Yep.
it's there's been some amazing things. And I would doubt myself and go, oh, if they only knew, like if they only knew that, I was dealing with, some really hard stuff and like maybe I wasn't the best person to host them or, just real kind of um like sour thoughts, that can easily happen to all of us. And I think that that's one of them. The other thing is that I'll share, and I probably never talked about this before. If I have, I haven't really directly said it, is that because I have been challenged with pain so much through my life, and especially in the last several years, it can be really challenging to sit here. And it can be really challenging depending on the day. And so I've done some interviews where I had been in high level pain. And to cover that up and to like, kind of come on and compartmentalize that has been challenging at times. Very, very, very challenging. And so, yeah, I would say that those are kind of the things that come to my mind first.
I'm super impressed by that because I know you and I have had many off-air conversations and I know the kind of pain, chronic pain that you deal with. But there's another kind of pain that you're taking on that I just want to touch on and then you can piggyback off it because I know you're going to have something to say about this. And I get this in the work that I do, and I know you get it too sitting in the seat that you're in. But it's called compassion pain. And so what you're doing when you give people a vehicle, right, to tell their stories and to be seen and to be heard is that you're at some level also absorbing that trauma of theirs or that pain or elements of their story at the same time. There's no way that you could hear these details about people's journeys and their lives and not take on some of that. So I'm so amazed at what you're doing, when you have your own health journey simultaneously happening while you're providing this space for others. You know, is that hard? I know it's hard for me. I'm sure it's hard for you.
Yeah, and I feel, y- I would assume it's almost probably harder for you in a way because you are consistently talking with people who have been injured by botulism and Botox. And so that's primarily the people that you're speaking to, and they are all in pain. They're all going through a really tough thing. And I think that there have been people who have come on this show and have had testimonies and experiences, and a lot of them have been on the other side of it now. Like they're on the other side of it, or their careers now based off of it. They've done the work and they've come kind of out, and now they're helping others, and that's facilitated their journey and all of that. And I think that it's almost been, if I'm honest, it's almost been easier to to be, it's probably easier to be in my seat than it is to be in a seat like yours. But what has been challenging is hearing so much information and
Mm.
then on the back end, applying that or thinking about it in terms of my own life and being like, wow, and like sitting with that tension of, oh, well, now I need to pay attention to this. And now it's the overwhelm, right? Of like, oh my
Overwhelmed.
gosh, like now
Yeah.
what if this is it? What if I apply this? What if this changes? What should I be thinking about this too? And just this whole back end conversation that I would tend to have or probably still have in my mind about new information that's coming to the table. And so yeah, I think it's a combination of compassion fatigue because that is real. And I think, someone who's, I'm pretty sure that I fall into the empath category, and so like yourself. And so I think that can be hard at times, especially when people have tough stories or they've been through a lot. But I think in my case, there's a lot of success, from the people that I've chatted with and people who are now helping others and, experts and doctors of all various kinds of, various sort of sectors in life. And yeah, I think it's sometimes more challenging for me to take in all of the information and to be able to balance it all and to again file it accordingly, if that makes sense.
Well, that in itself would be exhausting, I
Yeah,
think.
it is.
Just to, you're constantly, I envision it like this, you're constantly just holding so much. And then you have another guest coming up. So it's like, where do you find the room?
Yeah.
Right? Because I know for me, my brain can only hold so much. And then it feels like it is truly at capacity. And now I'm putting myself in your shoes, and I think you run around at capacity the majority of the time, don't you?
I
Yeah.
definitely do. I definitely do. And there's so like I said, like I don't take even 1 second of this for granted over the last few years, but I will say that there was someone actually in my so for those people that don't know, like a lot of people that have shows, they have like a third party host. And so this
Okay.
there that third party host, mine happens to be Buzzsprout. But they're the ones, so when I upload show episodes into the database, they're the ones that then take the show and
It everywhere.
they put it
Yeah.
everywhere. So they put it
Yeah.
into Apple, they put it into Spotify.
Nice.
And someone actually so there's a Facebook group for podcast hosts that have Buzzsprout as their third party host. And someone actually put in the group earlier this week something like, am I the only one that feels like crazy exhausted after an interview? And it was so funny because I could relate so much to that because you're kind of on this like high from being on and like, conversing and there's this charge and this energy that's behind. And then you sort of like crash out afterwards because you're holding all of this information. And it's not just during the interview though. It's like, it's kind of weird. It's like reading a book. Like when you go in for and when you embark on a new sub or a new topic, and then there's subtopics within that topic, it's like you're reading a new book and you're invested in the book and you're going through the book, and it's like the studying of that topic and the preparing for that topic and then the talking about that topic and then the afterwards and then and it's like you're invested in this subject matter for however many weeks, and depending on like when it's coming out or if it's in queue or if it sits for a couple, because sometimes episodes stack up and they don't come out right away. But it's just, yeah, it's like you're in this whole sort of deal with this subject matter. And then the book closes and then you flow to the next one and then the whole process starts all over again.
Oh
So
my
it's
God.
not just like oh, one day she's talking about this and with Dr. Whoever, and then it's a move on. It's like, no, it's like this whole experience is the word. And then that
Yes.
experience closes and then you move on to the next experience.
I love the analogy of the book, and I love the conversation and topic that we are on right now. I'm learning so much about what you do. Let's do a light and funny moment because I had some. Okay, so now I got to know if you could and had to pick a title. Okay, so think of the funniest, reel, or think of like a blooper reel that you've ever seen. And now you're going to pick a title for the blooper reel of this podcast. What would it be?
Oh my gosh, like an episode? I don't I
Yeah, like yeah, maybe do it like an episode. Yeah.
Okay.
The funniest one that you can think of.
Well, I didn't clearly I didn't prepare here. Um, uh, Matt's show comes to mind, episode 98, because it was such a mess. Like, and I just, yeah, I mean, it was such a mess, and it was so interesting. It was such a successful episode, which is so great. Like, yeah, it was such a successful episode, and he's great. He's been on the show twice now, and he's a good friend, and it's been so fun to host him, and I was so glad that he was my guest during that experience when, like, everything was going down, but it was like it was such a hot, hot, buttery mess that day. We were in our seats for the better part of, like, f at least 4.5 hours.
Holy
At least.
cow.
Yeah, and so it was borderline, like, we were I mean, he was drinking like shots of I don't even know what, not alcohol, but like these energy. I forget what they're
Energy.
called. I
Yeah.
forget what they're called. They were called. He was drinking something. I can't recall. I know the name of them, but he was just and we were cracking out. We were so tired because things kept happening and we were just so tired at the end, but we just laughed for hours off and on. And I think people heard that because I even got some messages. Because we obviously there were some things that I kept in there that were light and funny through that episode, but I even got messages just saying how nice it was to hear that episode because they could hear like our camaraderie. And
I love
part
that.
of that was because all this other stuff was happening behind the scenes and we were just like cracking up. Like, how much worse could this get? Like, what's next? Right? Like, what else is going to shut down? What else is going to happen? Is the cat going to jump on the thing? Tilly was on my desk. Like, it was just like endless. And so I don't know if there's necessarily like a title I could give it, but it was a mess.
The
It,
show
it,
you did not sign up for,
yeah, I
right?
did.
No.
We bless Matt's heart. Like he did, and he was just like, it was so fun. Like I wouldn't, he was the best sport. But it was a long day. Like we were so pooped.
That is a long
I think
day.
I think he took a nap after, and I crashed out but
That's awesome. Well,
and it was a great show. It was a great episode.
I haven't listened to that one yet, and I need to. Actually, I did start listening to it, but I haven't listened to the whole
It's
episode
a
yet.
lot. It's a note taker of an episode.
It is a note taker.
Yeah,
So if you think of a title for the episode as we go through other questions, circle back around
I
to it. If
will.
actually like some like perfect title comes to your mind. Okay, so let's also talk then about more about I'm interested to learn about like you changing personally. So tell me how being a podcast host and your show has changed you personally, not just professionally.
Wow, that's not an easy question to.
No, I'm sure not.
That's a
There's
good
a lot of
question.
layers to that one.
Yeah, there is. There is. I think that I have become um more I mean, I feel like I've always been a fairly compassionate person with others and I think it's because I've suffered so much in life with my health and a lot of it has been sort of undercover not something that people can tangibly see, which sometimes can be more difficult. But I think that my level of compassion for people has changed for the better because I have seen how much people have really suffered. And I think that I felt like I knew. I don't know if this is going to make sense. I felt like I knew, right, that people were just like this country alone is just a disaster when it comes to health and health care and what people are walking through and how dismissed they are and how real root causes are not addressed and on and on and on. But sitting with people and hearing them and I'm talking mostly about experts right now, right? Like experts who are, treating others and facilitating others healing paths and so forth. There are so many people who are suffering, and it's so tremendous. It's such an overwhelming feeling to think about the amount of people who have been misled or not aware of the information they need to be aware of. And I have so much like heart for um people. And I think before I might had I don't want to say that I was like more impatient. I don't necessarily think that's it, but I think I was probably a little bit more like, well, get on the ball with it, like open your eyes, like, do the thing that you need to do, And now I'm just like, wow, people are just going through it and even with all this information out there at our fingertips and with all the stuff that we're exposed to, there's still just an overwhelming amount of suffering. And so I think that like I have been almost burdened by that in a way. I think that's changed me. I think I've had to try to put boundaries up a bit, to not
Oh yeah.
take on all of that. But
Oh yeah.
uh I also just have tremendous respect for I mean, and I don't know if this fits in the professional category, but I think that I just have so much respect for what people are doing um based on their own lives. I can think of you included, like so many guests that have come on that have really like made a mission out of mess, so to speak. And that has made me, I think, just it's humbled me because I'm just like, wow. Like I think to myself, how awesome is it that people are this caring, in a world where there's just so much chaos and so much that we, well, obviously, like, we're exposed to more crazy,
More than ever.
yeah, than ever. And
Yeah.
so, but there are so many people doing such good things
Amazing
and
things.
really trying, like, really, they have a heart. And yes, they're making money. Yes, they have mouths to feed and they've got families and all of that. That's okay.
Yeah, it is.
They're choosing to really have an impact on people's lives and make a difference, and that comes with a cost.
It comes with a cost.
Yeah, it comes with a
Yeah.
cost. And so, like, even though this is partially fits in the professional category, I would say personally no. Like, I'm just kind of in awe of how much work people put in and how much just grit people have for doing what they do and trying to really make a difference and do it authentically and with integrity, because there's a whole lot of people out there that don't do that. But
Yep.
I've been so fortunate to sit with so many people that do. And so I hope that answers the question.
It did.
Okay.
It beautifully answered that. I love that. So now I'm gonna ask you then, with all of that, where then let's if we can switch into a little bit of a spiritual gear here. I am curious where you have felt God most in the journey, and where has it felt confusing or sometimes quiet? Um, Tell us about that, what that looks like for you.
Oh gosh.
That's a hard question. That's a
Yeah,
really deep
it's a hard question.
question.
Maybe
I
I should have spent more time thinking about these before, but no, it's better
know.
this way. Um There have been, straight up, I'll be completely honest. There's
Yeah.
been times, I'd say, in 2025, I had a few months where I really thought I was gonna stop the show.
You were gonna quit, right?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna quit. You know that. Yeah,
I do know.
yeah, I had spoken to you about it. And I've never shared that here. But I felt like I was confused. I felt like God was super quiet. I knew he had led me to this place. I knew he had blessed me with this opportunity. Um, and I felt like the wind had been taken out of my sails a bit. And I think it was multifactorial as to why that was happening. I think there were things going on in the background, things in my life personally, things with my health. There was like so much noise, and I just couldn't quite grasp like what my next steps were.
Mhm.
And I ended up doing a solo show around that time, being a little honest about like how I wasn't sure where the show was going. And that didn't mean the show was leaving, just I didn't know where it was going.
Said no.
But I was frustrated at that time because I didn't know. And I still don't know, right? I mean, I could get an overwhelming discerning feeling in a month that I'm supposed to stop. Like, I have no idea. I just want to do what I'm supposed to be doing. I just want to do what I'm
Yes.
called to do.
Mhm.
And when that, for if this is at some point, if this is no longer the place that I'm meant to be, then okay.
And you
But
feel like you will know.
I
You
feel
would,
like
like
I'll
you
know.
said, you would have that discernment and there you would just know, but
Yeah.
you're not there right now.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, and this is probably wraps back to like one of the earlier questions that you asked. And again, I'll be totally full disclosure here, but sometimes I've thought like that maybe I just shouldn't continue because this is a self-funded show. And a lot of people don't realize
I
that.
don't realize
I
that.
know
Yeah.
that's probably part of the challenge too, is that up until today, today's date in April of 26, like, I have self-funded this show. It's not for free. Production is not free.
And it's not cheap. I know
No,
that.
and
Yeah.
it's not. And I have fully relied on listeners to, use affiliate codes and so forth so that I can put that directly back into the show for production and editing. But I've never had a sponsor, up until this point. I've never had a sponsor, and there's a couple reasons for that. But I have had feelings and thoughts of, well, if things are tight and like, is it something that I should keep financially doing? Like, or, should I not be doing this? Is this a poor use of
Your resources.
resources?
I get it.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, I've had those thoughts too. I mean, yeah, that's a very that's almost an uncomfortable thing for me to share,
Yeah.
but it's true. Yeah, but it's true.
Well,
Yeah,
I appreciate your vulnerability with that, and
yeah.
I don't think that the average listener had any idea that that's how it worked. And so, I'm a big podcast listener. There's so many that I listen to, and I'm going to be thinking about that. I mean, nothing comes for free in this life. There is a price for everything, and so I think it's good that you described that.
Oh,
Um, let's switch gears maybe just a little bit and talk about creativity. And this might be a little unexpected, but if someone tried to describe, oh, I love this. I love this question. If someone tried to describe the heart of the show to a stranger, you get one sentence, Vanessa, just one.
oh,
What would you hope in your perfect world that they would say in one sentence?
wow.
And they're
Gosh.
describing the heart of intentionally well.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you guys could obviously tell that I really did not pay attention to questions before. In one sentence, I would say that I would hope that they would describe it as a place that they could come and listen and feel like they were in the same room with the host and the guest, and that it wasn't a place of overwhelm, but it was a safe spot for them to ingest and listen and get curious and to not feel like they were alone or they were being shamed by whatever they were going through, that it was just a place to digest and to rest.
I love that. Digest and rest. That was beautifully stated. Okay, so let's piggyback off that.
Mhm.
And I'll ask you, what is one question then that you wish people would ask you, but nobody ever asks you? No one ever
Oh,
does.
oh my goodness. Um, wow. I I mean, maybe I've touched on it already, like in
Yeah,
terms
little.
of
You can circle back.
yeah, in terms of maybe the work that goes into it, or tell me about like all of the stuff that takes place or that goes into it. But I think there's something else that is being downloaded in me right now, which I'm
I
waiting
like
for
the
it.
downloads.
I'm waiting for
Yeah,
it.
I like the downloads.
Um, I think just maybe if okay, if I'm trying to think of like how to even
So
say it.
take your time.
Yeah.
It's a really hard question.
This is a hard one. This is a hard one. I think that if I was like, wow, I wish somebody would ask me this.
I
I
can give you mine. Would that
okay.
help? I
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
actually had to download while you were talking.
Okay, go for it.
One of the questions that I haven't answered yet that I wish someone would just ask and maybe make me answer. And I'm not saying that I would want to answer it or that I would be comfortable
Mhm.
answering it. And they've probably asked versions of it, but not like really deeply, is why exactly do you do what you do? Why have you continued to do it? Or what is it in you that put you on this soul mission in the first place? And I don't think anyone has ever asked me that. Don't you ask me it because I'm not
I
entirely
won't.
ready to answer
I
it.
won't. I won't.
But but I've been thinking about this in myself for the last year, and I do have an answer. I finally have an answer, and it's taken me a long time to get there. So I don't know if that helps you with
No, that
yours.
does. It does. It does help me. I think people have asked me like in their own ways, but
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily sure that I think it's been more like of a surface question
But yeah,
versus
that's what I mean, very surfacey.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's been a surface question. It hasn't been like, cuz I mean everybody knows at this point if they've been a listener like what's sort of propelled me into this place was my own experiences, not just my professional experiences in health, but it's more so the personal experiences in health, the journey, the trial, the years of research and just tribulation, right? And just right when I thought I was like coming out of it, I got thrown into it harder than I ever thought. And it's like,
Yeah.
just this journey of crazy. Um and so but I think that maybe it would be different if someone sat down and asked me like, what's really behind it all? Like what are
Yeah, and no
you
surface stuff. We want to go
Yeah.
deep, right?
Yeah,
And
like
you don't
what
have to answer it, but
yeah.
I'm curious if anyone has really done that with you, and I don't think they have.
Probably not. No, probably not. Because I've given the answer I just gave you, which is like, yeah,
Yeah.
because obviously like my journey, but there's more underneath that
There is.
because
And do you really want to go there? That's the other part
right.
of the question is that you can answer the question, but are you really answering the question? Right.
Right.
So that's what I feel like it's been for me. Have I actually, I've asked, like I said, I've been asked versions of that question, but did I really honestly answer it? No, not yet. That had not come out yet.
Yeah.
And I think you're the same.
Yeah, it's actually really thought provoking because there is more underneath
There's more.
and you don't like I think to myself, wow, would I sound selfish if I even answered that, right? Like because would it be like a self-serving thing that would come out of my mouth? Like I would hope not, but like there's always something that's serving you whether it's direct or indirect or you know
Right.
maybe you're searching for something that, is being that there's been a void of some kind. And so,
Sure. Yep.
you're subconsciously trying to fill that void. And I'm not saying that that's even what I'm doing. I'm just
No,
thinking
no,
like,
it's just, it could be. Yeah.
yeah,
For
it
anyone
could be.
answering that
Yeah.
question,
Yeah,
right?
it could be, but that's a really thought-provoking question. I really hope that you guys who are listening are appreciative of the fact that I did not study these. Because you can tell that, it's just I think it would have been different actually if I really studied these questions and like really just, sort of answered them before because I would potentially run the risk of coming off scripted and I would never want to do that. But I also ran the risk of being a little stumped. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
That's
And that
okay. I'm going to move on because I can piggyback right off of that. So I'm just going to ask you, and I think this is a good question. What then just keeps you walking this journey? Because this is a journey. There's so much balancing of guests and the production time, your own health, your marriage, your dogs. You have all of these things that are a part of Vanessa. What keeps you walking this journey though? Because you're making a conscious choice every day to
Mhm.
wake up right now and continue doing this work.
Honestly, it's oh gosh. Is this like a closing question?
No,
Okay.
not
I
necessarily.
was gonna say because I'm
I might
like,
think of something else. We'll
yeah,
see.
I was gonna say I feel like if there's a closing question, this might come up then. But I think that um, it's so life giving, and I think that it's is as much as it's. I pray it's given life and awareness and provided in whatever way people have needed to whatever degree, even if it was just the littlest blip or the biggest revelation. It's also been so life-giving for me, and I think that it provides purpose too. Um, I always knew, and it was actually spoken to me many years ago that there would be a time where I g gave, back and I found a way to really, like, use what's happened and turn that around or to be given an opportunity. And I absolutely consider this to be one of those things, and like I said, I don't know what's in my future. I don't know what my future looks like in terms of opportunities that arise or, I have to pivot in some way or change trajectory or go down another path where I'm, able to use my past circumstances and, you know, uh, I'm called differently. But I absolutely feel like this is just it's so life-giving, and that's what keeps me going, and I love learning, and I love being able to share that knowledge with other people. And because I'm not the expert. I mean, I've learned a lot about a lot, but that doesn't make me the expert of any of it. And so, yeah, it's life-giving on both ends, and I hope people can feel that when they hear me with guests, because I'm just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm learning, like, more and more," and just when you think you can't learn anymore, you're just learning, you just it's like just it's a never-ending cycle of awesomeness, in my opinion.
The two words that you just used, life giving, are so amazing. And I didn't know 3 years ago that you and I would become friends. I didn't know that you would be a huge support system in my life, and that when times were tough and I was going through tough things, that Vanessa was on the other end of the conversation. I mean, I could have never envisioned that. And so what you have done and being a support to me is not something I would have ever expected, and it's such a pleasant surprise. And so your friendship to me has been totally life-giving, and I think that you should know that because it's the truth.
I appreciate that so much, and I feel the same way.
So,
I really do, I feel the same way. I mean, I it's amazing what has come out of the show, as, like, all of these beautiful side benefits, one of yeah, our friendship being one of them, and it's just crazy, like, you embark on a journey and you think it's, "Oh, well, it's just gonna be this journey," and there's just all of these. Yeah, it's like I envision like a tree, and it's like you have the trunk, and the trunk is like
yeah.
the mission, and then you have all these branches that end up producing all of these leaves or this fruit,
Mm.
and it's just like you don't even know what's in store for you, and it could be exceedingly. It's like I have goals, and I've always had goals of, like, growing the show and reaching more people, but I'm also so blessed with how it's reached, people, and the metrics that it's at and all of that, and that's not even important. I've never mentioned one number here,
No,
I don't know if
you
I ever
haven't.
will, but, it's like there's so much more than that, and that's the stuff that ends up sticking with you, I think.
That's the stuff that makes it worthwhile and
Yeah,
really, really special.
yeah. So thank
Well,
you.
I have one last question, I think, and I think
Oh
this is a good
gosh.
question. Tell me just, we like perfect world stuff because it's fun to have goals and it's fun to envision, the things that we want. And sometimes I think it's good to talk about those things. So tell me about what you would like to see happen in the future or something maybe just that you're hopeful for. How about that? That would be a good thing. What are you hopeful for in regards to this mission that you're on with your show?
Oh gosh. What am I hopeful for? Well, I'm hopeful that I could keep going. Like I said, I don't know what the plan is, but I'm hopeful that I can keep going. I'm hopeful that yeah, I'm hopeful I can sustain it. I'm hopeful that I can expand on different ideas and be closer. I also want to be able to connect with the audience more. I think
Mhm.
that's a big goal of mine. I I was just sharing this week on social media on the show's Instagram that there's like this new opportunity that we have through my third party host where people can send a voicemail to us now. And
Nice.
yeah, and there's been a text message option at the top of the show notes for every episode. And so you can send a text message to us and like, but now we can not only get a text, we can get a voicemail and we can respond back. So
That's an
it's like just to be able to connect with people, to hear what they are going through or how they were affected by an episode or just to hear what they want. That's why I always encourage, to write in or because podcast hosts, and I've said this so many times, but podcast hosts, they love to hear from listeners. That's different than social media. It's not just a like or a click or like a quick comment on social media and you move on. It's long form content that people are actively seeking out and spending quality time listening, and then
yeah.
but then they move on, right, when they're done and move that because it's just part of their day or they're listening in the car or whatever. And so we often don't get the no matter the show's size, we don't often get the feedback the way that you would get from putting out a Instagram post or TikTok or, something of that nature. So I think finding ways to connect with people and hearing how they're doing, how they've been affected, what they want to see, what they want to hear, that's a huge hope of mine. Like I said, obviously being able to sustain it in all ways, not just, resources and stuff, but just emotionally, and mentally and physically staying strong enough to sustain it, which is obviously directly involved with the healing that I'm doing.
Mhm.
And b- finding some really new, fresh perspectives, I think that I haven't touched on. I have so many ideas for the rest of 2026 and people I want to bring on. And I have like 3 people in lineup right now, which I think is, yeah, it's going to be, those are going to be some pretty cool episodes to come. So I'm open to
Mhm.
whatever is presented to me. And of course, I don't want to not be in this seat. And I would love to see the show reach even more people than it's reached already. And if God blesses me with that, then I mean, I'm already thankful. But if it were to grow more, like that would be amazing too, right? Because the goal is to touch as many people as possible.
I love that so much. And I am not going to conclude this without just a little call to action to all your listeners. And as I'm telling them, I'm also telling myself. Today is the day to reach out to your favorite podcast hosts and put in a comment and to say, "Hey, I watched this show and it really meant something to me." Now that I hear you say that that means like the world to you, it's on my heart to go because I listen to lots of podcasts.
Yeah.
Now I need to go and I need to show my appreciation for the work that these hosts are doing because it's extensive and it's incredible. And I know for me, I cannot wait, Vanessa, to see where you go with your podcast and the guests that you have on and just what the future holds for you. I really appreciate you chatting with me about this today. I think that this was awesome.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Well, little side note to our friends who are listening is you already know, it's like this was not originally going to be episode 100. But, we had I had a feeling I couldn't ignore, and it was just kinda weird how the guests that I do have lined up, they couldn't make it for this episode, and it kept happening and kept happening, and I tried to ignore this feeling of, there needs to be no guest. You are the guest for episode
You
100.
are the guest.
No. No, but here we are because it was obviously meant to be this way, and so
Yeah.
I just wanna thank everyone who I know in many cases people sign up and to listen to these shows because they're interested in the guest and what they could potentially bring to the table for for the listener's personal circumstances. And, I'm dying to hear about, X, Y, and Z. And I want to learn about whatever these minerals and I want to hear about Botox injury or I want,
Right.
on and on
Whatever
and
the
on.
topic.
And this is not that, right? This is me. And I don't have necessarily the answers for you today in terms of what's going on with your personal circumstances. But what I will say is that um, I am so incredibly grateful for every single person who has listened to this show over the last few years. I It would not be a show without people listening. It wouldn't be a show without people sharing. It wouldn't I've never advertised like I've never advertised. I've never, done I mean nothing really, nothing. And so it's all been word of mouth and referral and that has meant the world. And I think I'd be remiss if I didn't like close this just by saying that this whole experience with, just sitting with people and learning and talking and being able to share perspectives with the world, it has been one of it has been one of the joys of my life. Um because I have walked such a tough road over the last 6 years or so. And it's been my journey's been a lot longer than that. It's been a couple decades, but the last several years of my life have been really challenging. And while, I there's obviously a lot of things that people don't know and I might be able to elaborate on someday, But this show has been such a bright spot in some really dark, or I should say some really tough seasons, or I should say like seasons within an overall season of hardship. And I really really told myself not to get emotional. I didn't want to get
Hey,
emotional, but
that's okay too.
um it has been just it's been such a joy. It's been such a light. It's been such a light in an often very very trying uh time. And I still, even through the trial and even through the pain and all of the things that I've been walking through, that's all part of the healing. I don't want people to think, like, oh wow, like I mean, yes, there's so much suffering, but there's also so much healing that's happening too. And I think this show has been a part of that healing because I'm not the same person that I was when I started the show. And I'm so grateful for that. And I know that I'm closer to a time where, I have so much hope, not just for yeah, not I just have hope. I have hope for the future, and I don't want anyone to, you know, hear this and think like, "Oh my gosh, poor her." That's not it. Um, I have a lot of hope, and this show is just it's just brought so much more than people could I think more than people could even conceptualize. So I just want to say thank you for everyone who's listened and supported the show, shared the show, written a comment, put in a review on Apple, whatever it is, right? Just thank you. Thank you so, so much. And I think that that's probably where we end because I don't know what else I have in me.
Okay, sounds good. That was beautifully said. Okay, everyone. I hope everyone has a great day. And Vanessa, thank you so much for allowing me to be a part of this. I will
Thank
be
you.
thinking about this for days.
Thank you so much. Yeah,
You're
no,
welcome.
we're not going to end yet. Thank you. You deserve a special thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this with me, to, just this was not, like I said, this was not planned. So I appreciate you so much. And I love you as a friend. And I'm glad. And I'm just glad to be having this experience, but also I'm excited for you to come back because one day you're going to come back. We're going to have we'll have another conversation for listeners about what you're doing and what you're up to. And so I look forward to that too. But thank you so much for
Oh,
hosting me today.
you're welcome. It was fun.
Yeah, no, it's been fun and I appreciate you. All right, my friends, thank you so much for listening to this special episode, episode 100. I am so grateful and I will see you next time.